I'm back with Frankly Speaking, and tonight I have a new guest, a very special guest, a guest who can look at the entire situation in India from a distance by knowing enough about the insides. Joining me tonight is the man who everybody in India calls the legal eagle. Mr. Harish Salve needs no introduction. Thank you very much, Mr. Salve, for joining me on Frankly Speaking once again. It's a pleasure to have you. You're joining me from London, and you're looking at an India where we've seen the peak of 4.25 lakhs infections per day. We're down to about 3.25 lakhs reported infections in a day. A death rate close to 4,000 has gone beyond that, but currently just under it. And of course, stories from rural India that really make your skin crawl. Mr. Harish Salve, how do you see the situation in India as compared to other countries? Is the lack of preparation, as the current narrative in India really all about, is that something that you also agree with?
The world was caught flat-footed last March. And I don't think India prepared for the scale of infections which you are seeing today. It is a variant which has been dubbed as the Indian variant, although I must say the British Prime Minister yesterday was very particular in saying the 1.617 variant seen in India. So it's known as the Indian variant. I don't think anybody could have foreseen this kind of a variant. Now, the problem is if you go searching for scientific evidence, you will find scientific evidence and views of scientists right from saying it's behind us to scientists saying it was going to hit 800,000. Even now, today's New York Times said 800,000 per day. We have seen it drop from 400,000 circa to about 320 circa. Hopefully it will stay there. And of course, we talk of reported infections because you have to compare like with like. You had 400,000 reported, you had 320,000 reported. So, yes, we are unprepared. Could we have prepared better? In theory, yes. But all policy makers have to take hard decisions. And, well, we prepared to the extent we could, but I don't think anybody saw this kind of, you prepared for a wave, what you have is the tsunami. So, yes, theoretically we are unprepared, but I don't think anybody really saw the extent of what would happen with a variant hitting us like this.
Mr. Salve, the fact is India in the initial part of the second wave came into it from a background of almost normalcy being restored, guards coming down, elections and festivals going on the way they were, and which is why possibly the anger against politicians and policymakers is at its peak, given the fact that it was these same netas, politicians, leaders who were out there campaigning for states which had gone to elections at a time when the signs were pretty clear that we were knocking on the doors of a second wave. Yes, it turned out to be a tsunami, but definitely the second wave was knocking at the doors. Did we really not see the signals coming, or were we really behaving like one of the courts has observed, ostriches with their heads buried in the sand?
You know, hindsight is always 20/20. And today, from where we are perched, we clearly see that maybe having the elections at that time was a mistake. The question is, when the elections were planned, were they perceived to be a mistake? And these very, yes, people are passing comments about ostrich with the head in the sand, etc. Well, let's not forget it's our courts. Bombay High Court, for example, had said we will do away with virtual hearings and have physical hearings. all of us are equally guilty. We were all what is called lockdown weary, and everybody was in a hurry to get back to life. Look at this country. Yesterday, when the Prime Minister announced that we may have to roll back the 21st June relaxations as per the roadmap, there are groans and there are howls of protest. And even Monday onwards, indoor hospitality is opening up, restaurants are opening up. There is a view that don't allow this because this variant may grow. Now, some hard policy choices have to be made. He has made the policy choice of opening everything. If things go bad here, somebody can say, did you not see it coming? Have you not seen it coming? Today, from where we are, everybody is saying, haven't we had enough? Is it really that bad? Can we not open up because jobs are at risk? So, there's always this trade-off, and policymakers have made mistakes, that there is no doubt. But this mistake is in hindsight. And we all, look, each one of us, let's point a finger at ourselves. Each one of us was lockdown weary. Everybody wanted to get back to life. The government didn't come and take the mask off our faces. We took them off voluntarily. When there are people in the middle of a crisis, somebody went and did a shot of the Kanpur market. People milling about as though there was nothing wrong. There were no masks. There was nothing. There was no social distancing. So ultimately, we have got so used in India to living under the British Raj and then blaming our government. So you blame the British, now you blame your own government. Yes, the government could have made a hard policy choice. And I dare say if we had declared a complete national lockdown, we wouldn't have seen this day. But then if you had declared a complete national lockdown, somebody would have said, this is yet another demonetization decision. This is yet another crackdown. So, these are very difficult choices to make. You make choices. History tells you whether you made the right or the wrong choice. As we look at it today, yes, possibly we shouldn't have had these elections. But at that time, it didn't look so bad. Everybody knew that we are surge. Nobody knew that we upsurge. So I don't, passing these comments really doesn't help.
That's right. And the other option is that, our constitution is clear about the fact that when the term of a legislature comes to an end, there are certain actions that have to be taken. If they are not taken, there cannot be a vacuum that prevails. And there would have been fallout if elections had not been held at that point in time. And what would those scenarios be like, Mr. Salve?
Today the elections had not been held and the term of the assembly had run out. You would have had central rule in West Bengal. Correct? The union government from Delhi would have ruled Bengal. Then they would have said they've not held the election because they knew they would lose the elections and they wanted to rule Bengal. Today our Indian problem is we are so busy finger pointing. Why can't we look at solutions instead of looking at all this chest beating? Yes, we went, and if there were crowds, people came there. Yes, it was irresponsible in hindsight to have rallies. Everybody did them. So, and at that time, did anybody even remotely think there will be this kind of a surge? No. I don't blame each and every person in public life for being guilty of this. Why did the courts not stop it then? Why did the judges not stop it then? What's the use saying ostrich head in the sand? If they were so sure, there were PILs filed to stop the elections. Court said, no, we will not interfere. So, this suddenly now everybody is ganging up and saying one union government is responsible for this whole upsurge. I think is not the right way to approach this. These kind of comments don't help anybody, and they don't. You have a problem at your hands. You have a problem about how counting is going to be done. Pass orders. Do whatever you have to do. This kind of name calling only creates fodder for the media and you people to come up and say "Phatkar lagai," call them names. It doesn't help anybody.
Mr. Salve, I want to ask you, and this is an issue of great debate in many circles today, which is the courts coming into the management and virtually policy making in COVID times and pandemic times. Let's begin with what happened in April when you were appointed by the Supreme Court as an amicus, to come up with solutions. And it led to all sorts of objections and statements being made that you had been chosen because you were a classmate of the Chief Justice of India, you represented the so-called industry. The world has got divided, especially in India. There are many classes. If you appear for industry, then you're a bad man because, you are profiteering and you are, somebody who has to be seen as a villain. On the other side, you have others who have become activists. But when you need vaccines, you go back to the same industry and abuse them and say, "Ki vaccine jaldi kyun nahi bana rahe?" Where do you think you stand
Navika,
on this entire issue?
I have read somewhere that India is today producing 9,000 tons of oxygen per day. This is as against 1,500 tons of oxygen per day. 1,000 or 1,500, correct? We have gone in 4 weeks from 1,000 to 9,000. How have we gone? Because the same people for whom I appear and for who somebody's heart was bleeding saying he appears for the corporates. Tatas have diverted oxygen from their steel plant to free distribution. Reliance has diverted oxygen from their refineries for free supply. Adanis are making logistic arrangements for distribution of oxygen. It's a massive task. You have to first produce the oxygen, then you have to arrange for cryogenic tankers, you fill them in cryogenic tankers. These companies have paid for the cryogenic tankers. These companies have overnight imported or converted ordinary tankers into cryogenic tankers. Then those tankers are sent out. They are mounted onto the Oxygen Express. The Oxygen Express with 2 engines, electric and diesel, moves them. When they reach the destination, they are put back on a truck. They are taken. Unfortunately, not many hospitals have cryogenic storage facilities, so they have to be put back in cylinders and the cylinders distributed, etc., etc. Now, all this is going on free of charge. Collaboration of the Indian Railways, collaboration of Indian industry. These are those corporates who are doing work. Vedanta went back to work. You had the NGOs coming and saying, please do not allow them to start producing oxygen. They have started producing oxygen. 1,000 tons a day in Tamil Nadu. So, and giving it free. Nobody's charging for the oxygen. So, this is becoming absolutely ridiculous. This divide which has come into India. And in India, I'm sorry to say, our conversation has become binary. You have a group of people who purport to represent civil society and bring causes to the court. And I have seen for the last 4 Chief Justices, right from post-Lodha times, Justice Keher, Justice Deepak Mishra, Justice Bobde, I have seen, at least for these 3 Chief Justices, because they were lukewarm to these people, they took on PILs, but they took them on selectively, and they did not pass orders on demand, you attack the judges. So today now you have a binary definition of a judge. A judge either goes by what a group of people want him to go by, or he's sold to the government. He's sold to the corporates. Because they can never be wrong. They are always right. Their point of view must prevail. Doesn't matter if they can ever win an election in their life, but they must get policy dictated through the courts. So this is a binary conversation now. Either the court passes this order, which is what they are the ones who have eyeballs. They are the ones who are articulate. So they have articulated a point of view. All of you pick it up, give it front page news, and if the court doesn't rise to the occasion of passing that order, the judge has to be sold to the government or worse. This will destroy our institutions. Oh, who cares?
But But that's the point. But that's the point. The point is you are close to a judge, the judge is close to the government, and therefore, nothing is seen which is, sacrosanct. The courts are not sacrosanct. I don't know if the courts itself are to be blamed for this, simply because ever since judges came out and did their press conference, some sort of a Lakshman Rekha has been crossed, and now everybody crosses it virtually on a daily basis. I want to ask you, Mr. Harish Salve, how do you think this issue has to be dealt with? 6 high courts are hearing various cases. Somebody in Delhi High Court says that 700 metric tons of oxygen must be supplied to Delhi. Now, there is a finite amount of oxygen that is available. Giving to Delhi in that amount means taking away from another state. What about Article 19 and 21 for citizens of those states? Are we looking at ourselves in silos? Is this a personal, if it is one-upmanship on the basis of the people from the bar, is it also an issue of one-upmanship amongst judges?
See, I'll tell you what is happening is, and this is the reason why Justice Bobde, in fact, took cognizance of this. He took cognizance of this because he had to bring the Supreme Court into play where it came to national plan for distribution. That doesn't mean the high courts would not hear the cases, and the Supreme Court never said that, because there are problems which are local. For example, if there are problems of distribution and there are hospitals claiming that some hospitals are being favored in favor of to the detriment of other hospitals, they go to Delhi High Court, because Delhi High Court deals with that problem. It's a Delhi problem. But how much oxygen should come from Tamil Nadu to Delhi is something that the Delhi High Court cannot deal with. Now, you can't, if everybody starts directing the union government saying, bring so much oxygen into my state, there is only that much which can be distributed. So that is why the Supreme Court said when it comes to the national plan, they will look at it. And that's how they were doing it. So all this uproar against Supreme Court taking cognizance, I'm sorry, was completely misconceived. And if you notice, Justice Chandrachud has been conducting the hearings. He has never used harsh words against anybody. In fact, he always ends with a word of praise for everybody who's doing their best. That's how it's that spirit in which you have to work these cases. So the step to bring this into the Supreme Court to oversee the national plan is correct. Now, how do we distribute? You have to broadly see that there is a rational policy on the basis of which it is being distributed. Somebody may say that this is my formula. Now, if you have a formula and the formula is working, and I believe there is some complex formula which the government has, the Supreme Court has set up a committee. Committees of all private people. I think Dr. Trehan is on it, and a lot of scientists and people are on the committee. Government is happy with it, I'm sure. They will make a national plan, and on that basis, it will be distributed. Who should be given the vaccine? Now,
no, but that's where the credibility problem comes in, Mr. Salve, because the task force itself was set up on the recommendation of the government. So people are saying that, Supreme Court has become the window where the government dresses, their failures, proposes something which the Supreme Court accepts and bails them out.
So, this is you touched upon the point, Navika, the point here. What is the point? The point is people want to use Supreme Court. Their primary objective is you must show the government down. Secondary objective is you serve public interest. Now, if that is your approach, then you feel disappointed if the government is consulted in setting up a committee. From a judge's point of view, if the government suggests, has anybody said, why is Mr. So-and-so on the committee, he is not qualified? No. You will say the government recommended a bunch of names. Look, this is not a political problem. No politician stands to gain from this. No government stands to gain from this. Believe me today, if I was a head of government and somebody took over the responsibility of administering these issues, I would happily hand it over. I'm sure this is the biggest nightmare for the government and for the Prime Minister living through this. So to suggest that the government has any vested agenda here is ridiculous. So if the court goes by the government suggested people and it finds that those people have good credentials, by criticizing the court, you are exposing your real motive. Your real motive was to show the public that, see, the Supreme Court doesn't trust this government. If they have trusted the government, oh my God, your narrative has gone wrong. So you have to blame the judges, saying they become a window for the government. The government doesn't need them as a window. The government could have set up its own expert committee.
But Mr. Salve, the allegation and the accusation against the government is that this is a very centralized government. Decisions are made only by the Prime Minister. The image that is conveyed is that he works alone in solitary confinement with people that he thinks are right. There is no transparency. He does not engage with people. He does not answer questions. And then the Supreme Court is used. It was used in the Rafale case. It is used in this case. And therefore, this entire narrative of how the government is using the courts to really bail them out, and the fact that the former Chief Justice of India completes his term and then joins as a member of parliament hasn't really helped raising the credibility either of the courts or of the government. So some bit of the criticism will stick.
So let's rewind a bit. Let's go back to Rafale. It is these same group of people who attacked Justice Mishra because of a press conference and saying that the Chief Justice cannot be the master of the roster. You remember that? And who spoke the most in the press conference? Who spoke the most in the press conference? Justice Gogoi. When Justice Gogoi became the Chief Justice, he kept the PIL roster to himself. And he ran it as master of the roster. Who took the Rafale case to Supreme Court? The government did not go in a reference saying, Supreme Court, will you please certify that we've done no wrong? A group of people filed the court, and that time there was a lot of hope that Justice Gogoi is there and he will bang the government. Justice Gogoi's bench, with Justice Joseph on it and Justice Kaul on it, and nobody can suggest that they are in the slightest bit the kind who would be swept off by the Chief Justice or would not be independent. They heard the case, and unanimously, 3 judges decided that there was nothing in the petition. Can we just dial back a bit and remember the huge controversy over the so-called delay in the elevation of Justice K.M. Joseph? And he was on the bench.
Absolutely.
And he's never going to be chief. And he's never going to be Chief Justice, because we know who's going to be Chief Justice by retirement ages, right? And he concurred with the decision. He concurred with dismissing the review. So why do you say all 3 were not made MPs? The Chief Justice was became a member of Parliament. Whether he should or should not have become is a completely different issue. 3 of them upheld the Rafale case, or rejected the challenge and upheld the government's stance in the Rafale case. So this is what I'm saying. It has become binary. You take it to court saying, I will show the government. You fail, you come out saying judges are sold. If you had succeeded and somebody had said this government is this court is anti-government, so-and-so judge, his appointment was reputedly delayed by the law minister, so he's angry, would anybody have believed that? You would have said, nonsense, government. You've been caught fooling around, and just because the court has found you guilty, you're not blaming the judge. If the judge exonerates you, the judge is to blame. See, we either have faith in our Supreme Court or we don't have faith in our Supreme Court. If you don't have faith in our Supreme Court, why did you take the case to the Supreme Court? You can't say, I will take PIL upon PIL upon PIL to Supreme Court day in and day out, but the ones where it gets turned down, I will abuse the judges. When I succeed in my PIL, it's a great institution. The same within 3 days, it's a great institution, bad institution, great institution, bad institution.
But Mr. Salve, let me tell you, the Gujarat High Court has reprimanded the state government for its handling of COVID, and observations like, if you had a more practical, thoughtful and a more meaningful system of working, there would be much less of a crisis. Now, is this a legal observation? And sometimes these observations are not part of the order that come out. And then, there was this matter that, from the Madras High Court, which also went to the Supreme Court, the Gujarat High Court, these observations are made. Now, in some cases, there is the requirement of courts getting in, because where are citizens of India going to go? Everybody cannot go to the Supreme Court. They will go to their local courts, the high courts in various states. The courts intervening has helped, at least in pulling up administrations where administrations have been seen to be lax. But how do you really control accountability? Accountability is something that we demand from our politicians, but from our courts, can we actually demand accountability?
See, the courts also have to realize, and I hope they do realize, that they have to change the vocabulary back to the civilized vocabulary which has always prevailed for decades in the court. The kind of vocabulary which we see in courts today, the aggressive, taunting vocabulary, this has to go out. Secondly, judges now have to learn a modicum of self-discipline. One of the judges, here you have unrestricted access to the media, to the courts. And that is why here the judges believe that we must speak through our judgments. I've been in courts now here, I've attended so many hearings. You will see judges ask few and far between, and even if the questions they ask, it's in very guarded language, very polite language. You get a slight body language here. It's very difficult to tell here the way the judge is thinking. It's very rarely the judges come out and ask questions. They may pass an occasional sarcastic comment or something, which as a trained lawyer, you know that this is going well for me or this is not going well for me. You will never see the kind of banging which goes on in Indian courts. So that's one lesson our judges have to learn. If we have to allow, and I believe our Chief Justice wants to allow televising court proceedings, we have to make sure we don't become a circus. And judges have to be very careful. Because, look, you people are there for the one-liners. You people are not going to wait for the judgment. And this can create havoc. When I was arguing the Reliance case, the Ambani versus Ambani, the gas case, Justice Ravindran asked a question that if the gas supply is not as per the demerger scheme, according to you, Mr. Salve, if you cannot come in a petition under section so-and-so of the Companies Act, how do you resolve it? By arbitration? And I said, no, I will address you. He said, fine, keep this in mind. That was our exchange. The media flashed, judges recommend arbitration between Ambani brothers. The shares started going up and down. So, this is the problem. Media also has to learn what to report, what not to report. But if you're going to have live telecasts, judges will have to be circumspect, lawyers will have to change their vocabulary. And we have to learn that ultimately you want to pull up the government, do it after cool reflection, after you've seen, and do it in a judgment. Then your indictment to the government becomes permanent, it becomes a part of the record, and it can be tested in appeal. These gratuitous observations in court, I am telling you, is something which is a habit which Indian judges have to learn to give up. Otherwise, it doesn't augur well for the institution. See, we used to run, I've for years appeared as an amicus in the forest case. We had such a good working arrangement. We rarely had contentious issues between Ministry of Environment and Forest, myself as the amicus, and the state governments. We used to work things out. We used to go to court. You never had headlines. The Supreme Court passed certain very strong orders, never had headlines. because it was done in a manner where it did not belittle anybody. And the judges also realized that to get the officers to work, if you give a word of praise gets a lot more done than a word of criticism. Look at how Justice Chandrachud is managing it. He praises everybody. So when you go back, you don't feel insulted, you don't feel humiliated, you feel like going back with an innovative idea to the court. If you keep insulting people, you get people's back up, then the same officer will say, very well, you as a judge do it, then you face the flak tomorrow. He will not come with a good idea and say, you know what, let's do it like this. So this vocabulary must change. The judge's vocabulary has to change and the lawyer's vocabulary has to change if we have to work our system well. Because let judges also now not forget, when you talk of other people's mismanagement, the way our justice delivery system is managed, and the pendency in Indian courts, and the way we grant adjournments, and the way we run our courts, let's not go there.
Well, Mr. Salve, I know the media is a favorite whipping boy or whipping girl for everybody. Everybody finds fault. You know, if you look at issues in their merit, you will be seen either against X or for Y. You know, that is the society that we are living in, where you said everything is a binary. If you criticize the government, then you are with the opposition, and if you criticize the opposition, then you are a bhakt. And therefore you are Godi media, Modi ki Godi, you know, those are the kind of words that I use. So the media gets it on both sides. We are in a binary society. And in such a situation, I want to ask you, that's how the public expects ke roz sham ko, you know, there should be somebody who should be held guilty for the failures of that day, and tomorrow is another new day. I want to ask you, in this entire COVID scenario, there is the Allahabad High Court which says in 5 cities 2-week lockdown, in some other cities a 3-week lockdown. Now, if the courts are going to do all of this, then the pressure is certainly off the governments and the administrators, because they really don't have anything much to do other than you know, just hope and pray that people will forget this by the time the next election comes.
See, that is the other problem, Navika. Judges also have to be careful not to be used. You know, whenever people tell me the courts are stepping out of line, I say the problem was created by the government. I still have not forgotten 1992, when Mr. Milan Banerjee, the late Attorney General, my lord, waiting for your lordship's signal. And Justice Venkatacharya was hearing the case saying it's their commanders who give signals, not us, Mr. Attorney. Why did he say this? Because the government did not want to be seen as taking a position, namely, should they prevent the Kar Seva by force or not. They wanted to pin it on the courts. So sometimes this does happen, that you don't want to declare a lockout, you leave it for the judges to declare a lockout so that you do not bear the political consequences of your decision making. So, and sometimes judges in India say, very well, if you are not willing to make the decision for the wrong reason, very well, we don't have to win election, we'll give you a direction. So that's how maybe the Allahabad High Court felt it was necessary to order lockdown in 5 cities. And if it was challenged in Supreme Court, well, the Supreme Court, if you look at it strictly, it is not for the court to decide, because it's a policy matter whether to lock down or not to lock down, because there are upsides, downsides to all this decision making. It's the way in which I have no problem if the court decides that the reasons presented by the government and the plans presented by the government do not rise up to constitutional standards of policy making. If the government has a policy based on scientific evidence, you defer to it. If the government has no answers and says, we don't know what is going on, then you whip the government into shape and say, well, you have to take a call. And if this is your evidence, the call has to be shut down. And the government says, well, that's fine then you order the shutdown, you order the lockdown. So you have to see it decision by decision. The point which I was trying to make is the courts are today in India no longer, as I say, they are no longer mere tribunals which resolve disputes between parties. Our courts have become an institution of governance, which complements the executive. So you have the legislature, below which you have the political executive, then you have the civil service executive, and then you have a co-equal institution of constitutional governance, the courts, and all of us have to work in harmony for a better governance and a better system. And if we all talk in a vocabulary which is palatable, rather than a vocabulary which is polarized, it helps everybody. Name calling doesn't get any problems solved. Unfortunately, we become a society where, as you very rightly say, every evening, one person has to be pilloried and bashed.
The courts are also deciding the pricing policy for vaccination. Now, Mr.
I'm
Harish
seriously
Salve,
concerned.
who's at fault for this?
I'm seriously concerned with the court stepping in where the pricing of vaccines is. I wish we had the maturity to say 10% of the vaccines will be supplied to the rich people at a high price. And I would price that 10th vaccine in a way that the other 9 would be free.
If you look at the entire situation of the vaccine policy dispassionately, we possibly haven't planned it as well as we should have. There has been pressure on the government. There has been a liberalization in the vaccination policy without supplies being present. For the last 6 months, we've heard that the center will be the focal point where vaccine distribution and administration will be done. Suddenly, in the middle of it, we decide to give it to the states, and now states are competing with each other with global tenders. The courts have stepped in and said that pricing of this is not right, pricing of that is not right. Basically, India's become a free for all. Mr.
I'm
Harish
seriously
Salve,
concerned.
who's at fault for this?
I'm seriously concerned with the court stepping in where the pricing of vaccines is concerned. Let me tell you why. The citizen is getting it free. Okay? Except a small percentage of vaccine which is being administered through hospital. In fact, and this is entirely my personal view, I wish we had the maturity to say 10% of the vaccine will be supplied to the rich people at a high price. And I would price that 10th vaccine in a way that the other 9 would be free. And there are enough people in India who would have paid that much for the 10th vaccine to get it in the comfort of an air-conditioned home. So that's one way of pricing the vaccine. As far as the citizen is concerned, the citizen is getting the vaccine free. The union and the states are buying the vaccine. The union government is buying the vaccine. They have pre-negotiated a price for the states. If the states can get a better price, the states can buy a vaccine. The key point here is the government of India has not statutorily fixed the vaccine price, and for very good reason. If you want this is not going away. This COVID is not going away. It's going to be around for a couple of years. You will need booster shots. If you want to augment India's vaccine production capacity, you have to make it commercially attractive for international companies, for the Pfizers and the Modernas, to come and set shop in India. And they will not do it if you start muscling them and fixing statutory prices. Let's be very clear about this. The government, in my view, has taken a very sensible decision. You can call me a corporate lawyer, you can call me whatever. But let's be clear, hard economics is what governs this. UK, the government didn't fix prices. US, the government has not fixed prices. No government in the world has fixed prices. They are sitting across the table negotiating with vaccine manufacturers. Vaccine manufacturers are not, quote unquote, milking it. Yes, they are earning profit. They have made an investment. And they know they have to recover money, whatever they have to recover on this vaccine in the next 3 years. How much, whether they will be net plus, net minus, well, that's how the world is. But if the governments feel these are reasonable prices, these are affordable prices, they are working it. If states feel they can directly import vaccines and augment their capacity, why not? The government is allowing them to do it. Once that is done, I don't think this is really then anything remains for a court to interfere. Yesterday, Dr. Chris Whitty, who's the scientific advisor to the British Prime Minister, he was in the evening briefing, and somebody asked him this question that since the Indian variant, that B1617 or whatever, is spreading more in the youngsters, should you not be vaccinating youngsters? And he said something very important. He says one vaccine given to a 19-year-old is one less vaccine given to a 60-year-old or a 50-year-old. So we have to prioritize whom we want to inoculate. And this can only be done on scientific evidence. Somebody has to take this call. Should we inoculate a particular age group so that the pressure of heavy disease on the hospital system is reduced? That's the benchmark. And that has to be India's benchmark. We've seen our hospitals are getting overrun. You have to leave it to the scientists to decide which priority is to be worked so that the pressure on the hospitals comes down. And that cannot be decided on Article 21. That has to be decided on scientific evidence. And the evaluation may change. You may today say, give it to a 50-year-old, 40 to 50 segment, or suddenly tomorrow you may say, no, that's wrong, give it to the 18 to 28 segment. The scientists also are learning about this disease as we go along. So this has to be purely driven by science. There should never be an attempt at coercive price fixation. The governments are in dialogue. Nobody is suggesting that this is being extortionately priced. The citizen will get the vaccine.
On the pricing issue, Mr. Salve, on the pricing issue, if I go by the economic theory, it's fine. I buy it because there has to be R&D that has to be done by these companies to keep upgrading their skills and having newer products, because we don't know how many variants and how many waves are still ahead of us. I completely take your point on that. But are you saying our overall vaccine policy has been without any failures? That's a question on which I want your view from sitting in London.
Our vaccine policy is just about taking off. In fact, maybe the one place, and I don't know why it happened, I don't know why the Pfizer vaccine was not approved right away. But other than that, I feel we have developed our own vaccine. We have AstraZeneca producing. I think we should have been more liberal. We should have gone, again, it's hindsight. We should have been more generous and said, come on, produce more, invest more, encourage more people to, people are scared of investing in India because of this mindset of India. Today, if you want to invest and set up a facility in 6 months' time, and you want to put in $400-500 million into it, you come to me for advice, I'll say, you don't know. Some court may tomorrow direct and the government will bring price fixation and you're hiding. Nobody trusts. I'm telling you, today was very distressing news I read. That Air India, somebody has applied for attachment of Air India for a non-paid award in a bilateral investment treaty case. How much is the amount involved in that award? $1 billion or $500 million or $1.5 billion? Peanuts for a country like India. Our reputation means nothing. You want to challenge the award, challenge the award. You don't have a stake, pay on the award. You'll get your money back. But we have to have ourselves insulted by a district judge of New York who's going to attach Air India. So, this is why people don't trust us. And that is why I'm saying the government has done a very good thing by not fixing the price of vaccines. It's a very positive signal saying, despite the...
Well, but there are enough criticisms flying around. So, Mr. Salve, when you moved to London, you didn't want to practice in the Indian courts. The reasons for your going away? Are you worried about the fact that sitting in London? If there weren't virtual hearings, then you wouldn't have been able to appear in Indian courts. You had made your choice to be in London. One, the reason why you went away, and two, I want to ask you, how do you feel when you get called a bhakt?
As far as why I went away is, you get bored of doing the same thing. I started going into the Supreme Court in 1978. By 2014, the same building, the same work, it becomes rote. I started enjoying international work. And if you have to do international work, India is not the center for international work. That's why I moved, not because I don't like Indian courts. I would have been in and out of India in any case. So that's as far as my moving here is concerned. As far as being called a bhakt, I'm hearing it for the first time. Because I'm not, as you know, I have zero presence.
Oh no, bhakt is somebody who bails out the government, and you're seen to be rather, very positively inclined towards the government, especially the Prime Minister, and the decisions that he's taken. So that for short headline purposes, is a bhakt.
All right. If I don't pick holes in the government, if I try and find positive solutions, I've always been like that. So that's my mindset. And if you call me a bhakt, then so be it. I don't.
Strange.
I don't.
Father in Congress and son being called a Modi bhakt. Find it strange?
When my father was in Congress is when I became the Solicitor General of India in Vajpayee's government. So I have never had any political inclinations, and I still don't have any political inclinations. That is why I have absolutely no problem supporting a decision rather than supporting a person, which in India is becoming.
That's very well put.
I would criticize the decision of the government. I would not criticize the government. I would praise a decision of the government. I just now criticize the decision of the government to fight, in a way, against a small piffling company like Kane for a piffling little award, in a way that embarrasses me when I wake up in the morning and read in a British newspaper that some New York judge is going to attach or has been petitioned to attach Air India. It pains me. It's that decision of the government I criticize. I don't criticize the government. So we have to learn this. You have to stop criticizing people. You have to depersonalize it, and let's look at issues rather than people.
Well, Mr. Salve, you're happy about representing so-called corporate interests. If the government were to do that, they would be called crony capitalists or a crony government. Well, that's the way it works in India. Yes, binaries are the way things work in India. But in this COVID situation, will binaries work? I'm not so sure. But thank you very much, Mr. Salve, for joining me on Frankly Speaking. Always a pleasure to hear a pragmatic view